Michael McCann.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I am delighted that you have called me into this debate, given that I sent a copy away to my local newspaper early today saying how magnificent my contribution was. I was getting a bit concerned that I wasn't going to make it, and it would have been a bit of error in the local newspaper. But, Mr Speaker, there are two issues in this bill, and I will deal with them separately, as the Government should have. The first is the alternative vote, and my party was committed in its manifesto to a referendum, and for that reason alone, I will back a referendum and alternative vote. But can I just tell you and remind people what we have in Scotland in respect to our voting systems? For the general election, we have first past the post. For the European elections, we have proportional representation. For the Scottish Parliament elections, we have both first past the post and an element of proportional representation. And for local government elections, we have the single transferable vote. A car crash, in my opinion, of electoral systems which lead to nothing but confusion, particularly for elderly voters in my constituency. Now, I have long held the view, like many other members have contributed to this debate, that first past the post represents the best system for delivering proper representation and proper governance to our country. And most importantly, as many other members have said in this debate, politicians can't hide in first past the post systems. But despite my private feelings, as I have said, I will vote to give the public the choice, but I will also campaign to retain the first past the post system. But there are three issues which concern me in relation to this bill. The first is the Deputy Prime Minister's position, because he has delivered a consistent message about the rotten political system that we have and for the new politics that he wishes us to pursue. And his attacks have been both against the system and the parliamentarians within that system. I disagree with that analysis. The problems that this House has had in the past were created by flawed individuals, not by flawed systems. Secondly, I am deeply concerned about the Coalition's plans for AV in this bill because, as has been said on many occasions in this debate, neither the Conservatives nor the Liberal Democrats put the case for AV in our manifestos. And I am therefore baffled as to why it is in the Government's bill, unless, of course, you look for a more cynical alternative. And that cynical alternative is to place the alternative vote referendum alongside the changes to constituencies in order to create a smokescreen. The smokescreen is the smokescreen to cover up the gerrymandering of our constituencies in this Parliament. And that's why... Yes, hello.
Well, gentlemen, he's making a powerful speech, but doesn't he find it perverse and unprecedented in recent parliamentary history that his party not only went to the electorate at the general election in favour of the AV referendum, but legislated for it prior to the election, and yet tonight will be voting against that very same policy?
But the only reason... Well, we're happy to resolve that problem. All you need to do is to decouple the bills, and we'll vote for the AV referendum separately, and we'll vote against the constituency bill. So it's in the Government's hands, it's in your people's hands to be able to resolve that particular situation. But I'll be voting against the bill this evening, and if I can move on, Mr Deputy Speaker, in terms of the Liberal Democrat voters, they will still harbour some disappointment that they went into coalition with the Conservatives, but nobody should be under any delusion about the duplicity of the Liberal Democrats in this affair, because before the election we had to listen to the nauseating lectures, in my opinion, of the Deputy Prime Minister, telling us how his was the only party that hadn't been in any way tainted by the troubles of the last Parliament. And of course that wasn't the case, it's factually incorrect. But we were led to believe that the Deputy Prime Minister would arrive in his white steed and that we would no longer have any dirty deeds or skullduggery in politics because the Right Honourable Member for Sheffield Hallam would save us all. Now, that stomach-churning hypocrisy pales into insignificance when you consider what is before us in this bill today, because the Boundary Commission will be given a task where they must place arithmetical calculations and arithmetical equalisation of seats at 76,000, first, second, third, fourth and fifth in their deliberations, except in constituencies which have an area which is in excess of 12,000 square kilometres, except for the Shetland Islands and except for the Western Isles. And if my memory serves me correctly, when I saw the Honourable Member for the Shetlands and Orkney after the details of this bill was released, you couldn't have taken the smile off his face with a blowtorch about the fact that he was going to get this free run the next time there was a general election. But the primary beneficiaries of all those exceptions are the Liberal Democrats. And you should remember that the Deputy Prime Minister said on a speech on political reform on the 7th of April 2010 that only the Liberal Democrats could be trusted on political reform. Yes.
The honourable member is wrong. He should read the analysis of his honourable friend from Aberdeen North. If there were no exceptions, then the Highland Council area and the Island Council areas would have 3 seats, all Liberal Democrats. Because of the exceptions, that same area will have 4 seats, 3 Liberal Democrats and 1 SNP. So the one beneficiary from the exceptions is the honourable member for Ilianan and Near.
A very opportune intervention, Mr Deputy Speaker, because I'm just going to cover that. Because I believe that you can't base the new rules on the distribution of seats on arithmetic alone, and then seek to introduce measures to protect certain seats, because then all you're doing is protecting certain communities against others. And, Mr Deputy Speaker, you cannot possibly be a little bit equal. It's simply not possible. Mr Speaker, the bill includes other measures which would be detrimental to our parliamentary system, and those include the arbitrary reduction of the number of constituencies and the permanent revolution, which will be the boundary changes before each parliament. Indeed, Trotsky would be proud on that particular basis alone. But, Mr Speaker, just in case anyone develops a mistaken impression that it's only in this House that people are concerned, that's not true, because I also have a piece of correspondence from Keep Cornwall Whole, which also demonstrates that there are people outside of this House who believe that this bill is wrong and should not be pursued. Mr Deputy Speaker, the AV referendum, however meritorious in its own rights, is being abused by the party's office as a cover for their proposals to break up constituencies, to gerrymander constituencies. I would ask honourable members and right honourable members on the benches opposite, particularly those who have spoken very passionately about this issue, to back the AV referendum on its own and to ditch the constitutional reform that is proposed in this bill for our constituencies. Thank you, Mr Speaker.